Hello, everybody. This is Frank with Iron Age News at the South Florida Conservative News Center. And the chainsaws are all going on in the background because the boys just went up to Stab and Go to get themselves a couple of pounders, and now they're up operating heavy equipment in my neighbor's yard. Sounds like a lawsuit. If it is, you'll be the first to know about it. But what I wanted to talk about on top of that is as it is hip and happening and now, and most people don't understand it. What is the Christian nationalist movement? Where do Andrew Wilson and Paula White Cain and even the evil Marjorie Taylor Greene and Nick Fuentes fit into this wide reaching ideology? So we're going to go over some of the things, and these are factually based. It is not conspiracy or anything like that. Of course, by the way, the late Charlie Kirk. So, how do all these diverse people fit into a movement called Christian nationalism? Okay, so depending on who you ask, it's either the next American theocracy or American Sharia or whatever, a grassroots revival of traditional values, or it is known as a slur on the left towards anybody who values the Constitution of the United States or God outside of Allah or whatever reptilian overlord operates in the Democratic and National Convention these days. So today we're going to give you clean, factual, historically grounded examples so you can figure out if you are one, if you know one, and if you will lend your car to your daughter tomorrow. And we're going to go with it following this. Christian nationalism is the belief that America has Christian cultural foundations. Those foundations are essential to civic order, and public institutions should acknowledge and preserve them. And that's it. And that is the core. There is no logo, there is no bylaws or constitution that we could locate. So it is a free flowing organization, much as the socialists are, which is a good idea because it keeps the socialists from attacking whatever they would consider as the bureaucracy or command structure of the movement. It does not automatically mean a theocracy. It does not mean replacing the Constitution with scripture, and it does not imply racial exclusivity. That's why I said you say House Fuentes there. He's on the margin, but we'll see if we can come up with something for you on that. Those are media inventions, those other terms applied to the most extreme 1% of the movement, which is Nick and company. So most Christian nationalists are simply reacting to what they see as an accelerating cultural freefall, the attacks on the family, the gender issue, the rise of radical transing, child abuse, objectifying children for sex, the collapse of moral consensus, and the government's increasingly hostile view towards traditional religious life. Even with President Trump in office, the Gestapo is out at the local level, stomping down people who are not listening to their version of what they think America would be good for, right? These people, these Christian nationalists, if we follow what they say, they want cultural stability, they want moral cohesion, and they believe America's Christian heritage provided those things. Okay, so here are some of the four distinct factions that we found. If you found other factions, please feel free to comment, send them in, whatever you want to do, and we will put it in the actually just put it in the comments section instead of the usual Jew hate and other stupidity. You could put it right in there and everybody will feel better. Pin it to the top or put it in there and one of us will pin it up there for you. Okay? Number one is the cultural Christian nationalists. This is the largest group of them all. Everyday churchgoers who want Christian values visible again in schools, public ceremonies, and daily life. They're not trying to run the government. They're trying to restore cultural norms they believe once held the country together. Probably like pre-World War One-ish into World War II era. So if you could live with that, that's what you're going to get. Okay, prayer in schools, prayer with the Pledge of Allegiance, things like that. If we're having a big pie concert, dance, whatever bullshit down at the local Y, someone's going to lead the thing open with a prayer. And also, none of the insanity towards the children, as was mentioned earlier. Number two, constitutional Christian nationalists. Okay, these folks go back to the founding fathers. They quote John Adam, they like Tocqueville, and they argue that the American system assumes a moral, religious people, which it does, or it did. It assumes it, doesn't mean everybody's living up to their part. They believe secular neutrality has morphed into secular hostility, which is what the socialists have been doing with it. So that's your second version. Very much, is it in the Declaration of Independence? What would John Adams say? Blah blah blah. The third one is political and activist Christian nationals. This group organizes. They probably have a little bit more infrastructure. They have people that run for school board. They push legislation and challenge progressive control of institutions. They see government, academia, and corporations as captured by an anti-faith ideology, which is not hard to believe. And they want to reverse that trend. And I guess they weren't seeing it in the failure of the Republican Party, which is outside of the Trump organization a remarkable failure. So I can see why this group number three came about. Number four, maximalist Christian nationalists. This is getting you closer towards the Fuentes types. This is the fringe. They want explicitly Christian legal structures. They are loud, but they are small. And they're usually the ones the media wants to talk about because it makes for sensational headlines. That's why you say with a guy like him and some of the others who have absolutely nothing to give you as far as real world knowledge, wisdom, or governance, why are they on top? Because they squawk the loudest. So those are your groups. Figure out where you want to be or figure out you don't want to be part of any of them. Okay, so what is this movement reacting to? And what brought it on? Obviously, you have to think about what it was that brought it on. And here they have four major pressures. We're trying to keep this fairly simple, and I'm not good at it, and I'm sorry. You have cultural disintegration. We all have talked about it before. Rapid shifts in gender ideology, family formation, sexual norms, and the loss of education at any level, even in elementary schools, have triggered a moral backlash. You have the loss of religious liberties. If anyone says they like the Bible or they're a Christian or something like that, they get stomped out. If they say Satan is great or I'm an Islamist, not just an everyday Muslim, but a hardcore jihadist type, go to the head of the class. We need you here. We need your specific insight into why we're all bad people, right? And that's what they're seeing, and that's what they're responding to. We see the courts and agencies pressing against Christian adoption organizations, hospitals that are still under those small businesses and charities. What used to be a pluralistic society now seems very coerced. Okay? See it as you wish. Those are the trends that occurred prior to today. Institutional capture, which is the third one. Many Christians believe that government, universities, and corporations have ideologically hijacked by a secular or have been. The Harvard jails, Columbia's, Oxford's, Cambridge have been taken over by atheistic socialist shitbags and are hostile to all faiths except for militant Islam, which they view as a controllable organization that just has millions of assholes that you can openly manipulate. That's probably right in the text of the Oxford Student Union these days. So, and then D, the historical revisionism, which I can't stand. Don't buy a history book that was published before World War II if you can avoid it. Some people feel that America's history is being rewritten to portray Christianity not as a civilizing force, but as a mechanism of oppression. Have you gone to a Chris Columbus Day event anytime recently? No, they said they were doing it for the Indians, but they weren't. It was a wedge. Most Indians now realize it was a scam. They lost out, much as the black community is losing out today, because they were stupid and manipulated, but nobody wants to admit to that. You have to admit to it. When you do something stupid and you've been manipulated, admit to it. Even to yourself. Go out in the backyard, talk to the dog. Tell the dog what you did that was wrong. I should never have dated that person. I should never have signed that document. What was I thinking about not getting a lawyer to look at this? Why did I believe this was going to go my way? And then it's over. And that is the issue there. And this strikes at the movement's deepest identity, what they actually want. And the movement's goals are actually pretty straightforward. And unless you are a screaming nose ring having purple haired whatever, you could live with this. They want to protect religious liberty, strengthen parental rights and education, reinforce traditional family structures. This is over the whole group of four, not one particular one. Go to an event, listen to whoever you like, figure out what they want. They want to restrict late term abortions, limit gender transitions for minors. I would say get rid of gender transitions for minors. That's just child abuse. Especially if you're talking when they talk about minors these days, they're talking about like under 9 because they have so weakened the whole thing, when statutory rape was a big deal. Now they're saying girls should be having sex when they're 11. Get them ready for a life of OnlyFans because that's where you got to be, right? Why would you need a man when you could be in a gender fluid polyamorous relationship and disappoint everybody in the sack? That's where to go, right? And also let's get rid of issues that limit school choice. And now on the cultural side, we're talking about restoring visibility of Christian heritage, which is public prayer, the holidays, of course, and patriotic civil rituals, which they talked about earlier. When they used to do, we have a flag ceremony, and then the guy would give you a prayer, and then we'd start whatever we're doing. Rebuild moral consensus around responsibility, community, and civil government. Okay. Now, how do they want to go about doing certain things? They want to decentralize federal power, elect morally grounded political officials, and reclaim local governance from bureaucratic control. Yeah, and you'd have to move them all into one town to get that done. Not that it means that it can't be strived for, it means it's going to be very difficult in the short run. And knowing how Americans are about staying on topic is going to be a daunting task for many, which is why so many people are trying to get into it, to be online about it, to talk about it online, because as you fail to do it, it's like losing weight, right? I'm going on a diet and I lasted on a diet for 3 weeks, but I'll still listen to the guy online telling me how I should go on the diet because I'm guilty that I didn't do it. But by listening to him, I'm still sort of supporting what's going on. Sounds crazy, but that is the short term psychological term for it. Okay. So, once again, the myths and the realities. Christian nationalists want a theocracy. The reality, only small minority of the organization holds to that view. Most want cultural acknowledgement, not clerical government. We want to include that in, not me, they want to include that in, I'm sure, different parts with the law, things of that nature. Historical accuracy. Was it, who wrote was it John Adams or John Quincy Adams? Somebody had actually written a book while they were putting together the Constitution, and it's basically all the minutes and who said what and why they did everything. That book should be considered in most documentation when they are arguing new laws or old laws in the Congress, because that is a factual document of the time. But it is not, and it is rarely quoted anymore, and it's a shame. Okay, so they also, had the issue that it's a white power movement. The funny thing is, when you pull up the stats on it, the fastest growing Christian nationalist demographics, where I guess they are building flags and having room meetings, Hispanic Pentecostals, African churches, real Nigerians and stuff like that, African church communities, and Korean evangelicals. And that's in los Estados Unidos. That's not back in the home world, right? A lot of them are anti-Catholic, kind of. More so, let's just ignore them because the guy's a douche, rather than let's just go burn all their churches down. They understand they've been led to astray and they are worried more about the teachings of Jesus than they are about whatever's going on in Italy. The myth that it's anti democratic, the reality, obviously, the movement overwhelmingly focuses on strengthening local government and constitutional order. That would sound anti democratic for a socialist who uses the term democracy to mean the organization that we have subverted to lead lead the people astray with the same democracy that gave $8 billion to the Somali pirates, right? That is a socialist view of democracy. It's weak, it's stupid. These people are trying to get the balls back on the bull, as we say, and go forward from there. My favorite, that it violates the First Amendment. The reality, most factions argue the First Amendment prohibits a state church, but does not require removing Christian influence from public life. It was meant, and people will argue with you, separation of church and state isn't mentioned anywhere. They basically were saying, without saying it, that we were not going to allow the Church of England or the Roman Catholic Church, Church of England, first and foremost, because we were having a revolt against the head of it, which was King George. And then secondly, the Catholics, because they figured the English moved to this side, the Catholics would sneak back in and try to take the colonies. So that's what you have there. Christian nationalists have become a major force, I would say mostly through Charlie Kirk, and possibly getting more traction through the death of Kirk as all these pretenders come out. And unfortunately, it seems that Charlie's wife was not prepared for the amount of knives that were going to be plunged into her body by all the old friends, as we say. And what has been going on is they are fairly ingrained in the GOP in certain areas, but that's only in areas that has a Trump aligned coalition. And you'll say Marjorie Taylor Greene, but she's an op. You know, she has been an op from day one. Don't ever believe anything. The guy who's running for the governor of Florida, he's about a half a step off of that. Okay. But this movement provides massive turnout energy. You get grassroots volunteers, things like that. They're going to have to start going out there and floating around and knocking doors and this and that and lending their plus or minus to either Republican, independent, or Democratic uh, politicians that meet their appeal. You still have Democratic voters who are the Kennedy types who do not want to see this whole place turned into a shit show, who own things. You know, when you see these guys, these older, uptight and white bastards that are doing all this nonsense or poo-pooing you out front of the Art Basel and all that stuff. Not Art Basel, the one in New York. There's a $20,000 seats. What poverty-stricken barrio are they living in, right? Don't kid a kidder. They want to pretend. Every actor, Leguizamo, that homo, right? Everybody who's out there who is playing that role, who has millions of dollars and feels guilty about it, still can vote your way. They'll talk that shit, but when a push comes to shove, they're going to protect their money and their family and their property first and foremost. So expect that they will be able to vote for some people like this, you know, because some of them will not be straight up Republican candidates. They will go as independents or they will do some other thing in there. So what you have is basically a broad, diverse, evolving coalition of Americans who believe the country has drifted too far from its moral and spiritual roots and who want to restore stability and order and identity to this country. They want you to be able to look at something and say, this is America. Not the shit that we have that we're trying to clean up now, but what America was. And it's not a pipe dream. It is not a walk down memory lane. It was actively taken from you. Those of you who are in your early 60s, the life that you wanted to give to your children and grandchildren was taken from you by an organized effort of socialism, right? It was just torn away from you. You didn't always know. Don't beat yourself up all the time on this one. Guys will say, well, I should have voted. How would you have known? Look at the stuff that we're seeing came out. How devious is that? These people were full-time paid operatives, spies, ops. They were all kinds of things that enabled the United States government to destroy itself and fund its own suicide. This group is just trying to step away from it. So that's what they are. Like I said, the Fuentes group and everything are on the very, very edges of that. They hide behind the Bible and sit around and hate the blacks and Jews all day. But other than that, that's kind of how this all works. Any questions or comments, feel free to comment where we said. We are on BitChute and Rumble and YouTube to some extent. And like I said, that's all we have for this. Have a good week. Talk to you later on.